Hi, Lester, WuShu engineer. Training. I'm a firm believer, obviously, in the process of physical and mental training. Um, my personal belief is that given the correct type of training, a human being can do almost anything. Pretty amazing things are possible with the correct type of training. And obviously, I'm using that caveat there that it needs to be the correct type of training. And because of my firm belief in the idea of training and in the benefits that can be derived from training and what can be done with training, I I'm also a firm believer in the idea of metrics, how to monitor your training progress. Because of course, without any kind of monitoring of progress, without knowing exactly what you're doing and what you're capable of doing, there's no clearly defined way to improve. Whereas if you have those numbers, if you have those metrics that are measurable, that you can repeat and under the same circumstances and see progress, then there's a strong possibility that you can really improve at a phenomenal rate. Now, of course, my personal interest in physical training is specifically related to martial arts and self-defense. I'm a martial arts teacher as well as a self-defense teacher. Been doing it for quite a while now. But what I've found in martial arts and in self-defense training is that there's been very little work and effort put into actually defining what the key performance indicators for these training programs are, or these methods of training are. There's an awful lot of anecdotal kind of training knowledge that is passed down from generation to generation, and some of it which is actually just almost made up on the spur of the moment, which if given a little bit of logic and rationale, starts to fall apart. So because of this deficiency that I've seen in these industries, I've put a lot of not just me, but my wife and training partner Sherilyn and I have put a lot of time and effort into trying to develop ways of accurately measuring someone's progress in martial arts, combat sports, actual combat, and self-defense training. And because of that, we've uncovered a lot of tests, KPI tests, and metrics that are already established that seem fair enough, good enough. But then there are a lot of areas that work hasn't really been done in, and so because of that, we in our other business, the Martial Arts Research and Testing Laboratory, we have a suite of tests that we have developed in conjunction with associated measuring devices and equipment to try to track the key performance indicators for, specifically in our case, for martial arts, combat, and self-defense training. So there are a host of things that we're measuring, things like striking power, speed, reflexes, reaction speeds, movement speeds, etc., etc. There's a whole suite of them. If you're interested, go and check out our website. But I thought that what would be really interesting as a series of videos for the WuShu Engineer channel is to look at some of the tests that we are using to monitor essentially fight metrics. And some of the tests that, as I said, that are actually that are already established, and other tests that we've developed ourselves. And so For this first video, I thought I'd use a test that we've developed ourselves, and it's actually based in part on a very simplified Illinois agility test. And the Illinois agility test has been well established and well used to monitor agility and speed of movement for athletes in running. And it involves setting out a series of cones in a particular arrangement. If you Google Illinois agility test or sprint test, you'll find many pictures and descriptions which describe it in quite a lot of detail. In our case, or at least for today, what I thought I'd demonstrate is our modified Illinois test specifically for ground movement. Now, of course, being on the ground is not the best place to be, especially not in a self-defense situation, but it does happen. So one of the metrics that we've identified in terms of your survivability and effectiveness in a fighting situation, in particular in a self-defense situation, is your ability to move with speed and precision on the ground. So I modified the Illinois agility test by reducing the number of cones to 3 cones, equidistantly spaced, 3 meters between each cone and 3 meters between the first cone and the starting point, which is at right angles to the course. And the idea behind the test is that when you start, a timer is initiated so that the whole your movement is timed. So essentially, it's a speed and agility test while on the ground. As soon as you leave the starting point, you have to go to ground, and from that point you can't get onto your feet at all, not even into a crouch to hop or run a little bit along the way. You've got to keep rolling. So any kind of roll is permissible, whether it's tiger rolls over your shoulder or rolls to the side or backward rolls or whatever. You can use whatever you like, as long as it's rolling, as long as it's on the ground. The test must also be conducted on a hard surface, so no mats, because of course in a self-defense situation, unfortunately, there are no referees bringing mats out so that you don't hurt yourself when you fall to the ground. So it has to be done on a hard surface, in my case on the concrete. I'm going to perform the test. This is not something that, I'm not the world's best ground mover, but we'll see what comes out at the end of the day. After having performed the test, and yeah, this is really just putting it out there so that you can take a look at this test and maybe leave some comments, because we're actually really interested in feedback from other martial artists, other self-defense instructors and practitioners, and combat sports athletes who might have some suggestions on how this test could be improved, or on variations of this test that they would like to see. So yeah, I'll go and do the test now, and I'll have a brief discussion at the end, and yeah, leave some comments in the comments section below. I really appreciate that, any kind of feedback. Thanks a lot. See you in the testing section. So excuse the shorts, it's Queensland summer at the moment, a few days before Christmas, and the weather's nice and warm. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to set the system up so that the capacitive touch switch on the lower arm triggers the timer when I move away, when I pull my hand away for the first time. And then I'm going to have to complete the circuit. You can see the 3 cones spread out, 3 meters between each cone, and about 3 to 3.3 meters from the arm over here. So I'm going to have to roll around that first cone on the outside, and then essentially an alternating figure of 8 style roll around all cones, complete the circuit around the 3rd cone, and then I'm going to have to roll back, and I'm going to have to complete another circuit of this final cone before rolling up into a standing position and striking the central pad to stop the timer. So, so we'll see what happens. I'll set everything up and then I'll give it a go. Just make sure that it's working. Okay, so that's that. Great way to spend the morning. Okay, so that was a little bit slower than I wanted it to be, given some time. And once again, as I said, with that key performance indicator that's been tested now, I have a number, and the number is 23.64 seconds. So I did the course in 23.64 seconds, which means that if I want to improve on that, and there are certain things that I need to improve on. Firstly, I think one of the issues that was plaguing my time in that test was the fact that at each roll you might actually notice it during the test. At each roll I had to actually just get my bearings again, because I was changing direction a lot because of the figure 8 pattern. So that is not ideal. I should actually be able to be taking in my surroundings, my environment, as I'm actually doing the rolls. So if I were to improve on that, I could probably shave at least 3 or 4 seconds off that time. In addition, the actual speed of my rolls was a little bit low, a little bit sucky, so that can probably improve quite a bit. And finally, a personal critique on the final roll up to the punch. I actually used my hand to get from the ground to standing, which is a no-no, because when you're moving from the ground to a standing position, you should not compromise your defense in any way, because you're at a point of transition, and that's most likely going to be the point at which your opponents are going to be trying to attack you in some way. So you should actually be keeping your defense up. So that's another improvement. That's just a personal critique of my own. So overall, a fairly average, I think a fairly average performance. For those of you who would like to repeat the test, I'll leave a picture of what the course looks like, and you can mark it off on your own. You don't necessarily need the fancy timers and capacitive touch switches that I've used. You can get a partner to time you in your movement, and that should be fine. And I'd be really interested in seeing your attempts on the course and seeing what you come up with. As I said, my performance is fairly average, so I'm fairly certain that quite a few out there are going to outdo that, and that's fine. But I'm putting this out there so that you have something that potentially is a little training tool that you can use to improve your own ground movement speed and agility. And as I said, if you have suggestions or critiques of the test, or or potentially different types of this test that you would like to see, or other tests for that matter, actually, leave a comment in the comment section below. Leave a like, and yeah, look, if you're interested in more content, hit subscribe. I'm not one for begging, but really it does help the channel. Anyway, and lastly, and probably more importantly now, I'd like to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, very safe Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And I hope that that you all have a brilliant time. I'll see you next year. Cheers.